This video is available in more than 10 languages.
Cette vidéo est disponible dans plus de 10 langues.
Dieses Video ist in mehr als 10 Sprachen verfügbar.
Questo video è disponibile in più di 10 lingue.
Este vídeo está disponível em mais de 10 idiomas.
Este video está disponible en más de 10 idiomas.
To mine. Bombs, maybe. Pandemics. War. But what if the most lethal force on Earth is actually something much more ordinary, something invisible? What if it's just the air?
Extreme heat. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something truly urgent, maybe even unsettling. It's how extreme heat has sort of shifted from being just a summer nuisance to becoming, well, Earth's deadliest active killer. We're leaning heavily on the source material El calor te matará primero, that translates to the heat will kill you first, life and death on a scorched planet. Our goal here is to really unpack this change, trace the impacts, and they are wide-ranging, and try to understand what it means for, all of us. Some of the stats are just staggering. That 2003 European heat wave, over 70,000 people died.
Yeah, it's hard to even grasp that number.
And then in 2021, that heat dome in the Pacific Northwest, it pushed Lytton, a town in Canada, to almost 50 degrees Celsius. That's 121 Fahrenheit.
Before the town itself burned down. Exactly. And India, in 2022, temperatures over 50 C, 122 F, thousands dead. So the big question from the source is, are these just freak events or something else?
Well, the source is really clear on this. They're not freak events at all. They're actually described as predictable previews. Terrifying previews, frankly, of our new normal. What's really disturbing is how fast our idea of extreme is changing. Events that were unthinkable just a decade or two ago, now they're becoming benchmarks.
Benchmarks, wow.
Yeah, it means we have to completely rethink our climate models, our resilience, everything. The projections suggest billions could face lethal heat and humidity by mid-century, levels the human body just can't survive.
That's a sobering way to put it. The book argues we need to stop thinking of heat as just passive discomfort.
Right.
And start seeing it as raw kinetic energy, the vibration of molecules. How does thinking about it that way help us understand why it's so destructive? Why it can bend steel or, kill silently?
That shift in perspective is absolutely critical. Because when you see heat as kinetic energy, you see it as a physical force. It's not just a number. It's the molecular agitation that literally warps steel, melts asphalt, kills crops. And yes, stops human bodies, often before people even realize they're in serious danger.
So it's insidious.
Very. Even a few degrees difference, which might not sound like much, can be the tipping point between discomfort and, catastrophic failure.
Our bodies are pretty amazing though, right? We've evolved to handle heat standing upright, sweating.
We are definitely well adapted with millions of sweat glands. We're designed to cool efficiently.
Yeah.
But like any machine, there are limits, strict limits.
What are those limits? Physiologically?
Our body's really like a very narrow temperature range.
Yeah.
Think 36 to 37 degrees Celsius. That's about 97 to 99 Fahrenheit for our core temperature. Go above that and things get grim fast. At 40 Celsius, 104 Fahrenheit, vital proteins start to denature. They basically unravel like cooking an egg. It's irreversible. Organs get strained. Push it just a bit more to 42 Celsius, 107 Fahrenheit. The brain swells, the heart falters, death comes quickly.
And humidity makes it worse, doesn't it? The book talks about wet bulb temperature. What exactly is that and why is it so important?
Right, the wet bulb temperature. It's a measure that combines both heat and humidity. And it's vital because it tells you how effectively your sweat can actually evaporate to cool you down.
Ah, okay.
The really frightening threshold, according to research cited, is a wet bulb temperature of 35 degrees Celsius, which is about 95 Fahrenheit. Once you hit that, even if you're healthy, resting in the shade, drinking water, your body simply cannot cool itself anymore. Survival time drops to just hours.
Just hours.
Yes. And the sobering parts of South Asia, the Middle East, they've already hit or exceeded this limit, even if briefly.
That story in the source about the Garish family, hiking in California, the parents, the baby, even their dog, they all died from the heat. It just underscores that point about heat killing silently.
Exactly. It's not dramatic like a flood or a hurricane often is. It just saps your strength, causes confusion before you even grasp the danger. It shows how deceptive this threat really is.
So if that's the impact on individuals, what happens at a community level? This brings us to inequality, displacement. The urban heat island effect is something many people know about, cities being hotter.
Right. Concrete and asphalt absorb and retain heat.
But the source uses this term, temperature apartheid. What does that reveal about who suffers most within these hotter cities?
Yeah, temperature apartheid. It's a stark term, but it captures a brutal reality. Urban heat islands make cities, 5, sometimes 10 degrees Celsius hotter than nearby rural areas. But within the city itself, inequality is magnified. Wealthier areas often have more trees, parks, green spaces, which helps cool things down.
And air conditioning.
And Absolutely, air conditioning. Wealth literally buys thermal comfort, buys survival. An air-conditioned apartment might be 25 degrees Celsius, cooler than a poorly ventilated room in a low-income area. The book gives examples like Anjali in Chennai, India, living in basically a tin roof shack. Unbearable heat. Meanwhile, nearby affluent neighborhoods are humming with AC. Or Leonor Juarez in Phoenix, struggling without resources near luxury condos.
So it's not random?
Not at all. When the heat waves hit, the poor, the elderly, those without resources, they are disproportionately affected. They die first. It's a pattern seen again and again.
And this unequal suffering is driving movement, right? The book calls it a great migration. It's not just people dying, it's people being forced to move. Can you expand on that?
Yes, it's a huge consequence. We're seeing widespread movement driven by heat. Farmers leaving land that's just too dry to cultivate anymore. Families fleeing coastlines hammered by stronger storms or rising seas, which are linked to ocean warming. But it's bigger than just human migration. Think about plants, animals, insects. Even diseases. Everything is shifting. Yeah, things like dengue fever carried by mosquitoes or Lyme disease from ticks. Their ranges are expanding into areas that used to be too cold for them. It's a fundamental reshuffling of life on Earth, driven by rising temperatures.
It's a staggering picture, but the source also points out a kind of cruel paradox, doesn't it? That sometimes people move towards danger.
It does, and it's a complex issue. Often it's driven by economics. People need affordable housing or they follow jobs. So you might find people settling in floodplains because the land is cheaper, or moving to sprawling desert cities for work, or into fire-prone forests because that's what they can afford, even as the climate risks in those areas are getting worse.
So it's not always a clear choice about risk.
Rarely. It's often a tangle of necessity, limited options, maybe hope for opportunity, overriding awareness of the long-term climate threat. The story mentioned of Melanie Elliott and Andrew McGowan, forced out of Houston by repeated flooding after Hurricane Harvey, ending up in San Diego. They're just one example of millions caught in this climate displacement, making tough choices.
Okay, so heat is a natural force, deadly, unequal in its impact. But the source material takes it a step further. It talks about heat being deliberately used, almost weaponized. Can you explain that?
It's a chilling concept. The book points specifically to policies along the U.S.-Mexico border. The argument is that enforcement strategies deliberately channel migrants through the absolute harshest, hottest points of the desert.
Intentionally.
The source argues yes, into areas where temperatures soar above 45 Celsius, 113 Fahrenheit, regularly, where water is scarce. Dehydration and heat stroke become silent, effective barriers. In that context, heat isn't just an environmental factor. It's used as a tool of deterrence, a weapon.
That's disturbing. And there's another kind of weaponization discussed, right? Something more insidious, the weapon of ignorance.
Yes, this is crucial.
Yeah.
The book details the decades-long, well-funded campaigns by fossil fuel companies and their allies to deliberately sow doubt about climate science. They knew that creating a perception of uncertainty, even when their own scientists knew the risks, would delay public pressure and government action. That delay has had catastrophic consequences. It effectively locks in decades of continued emissions, guaranteeing higher temperatures and far greater risks for us today and for generations to come. It was a deliberate strategy to protect profits over planetary health.
So against that backdrop of deliberate obfuscation, this new field of attribution science seems incredibly important. It connects specific events to climate change.
It's a genuine breakthrough, yes. Attribution science, pioneered by researchers like Friedrich Otto, allows scientists to analyze a specific weather event, say a heat wave or a major flood, and calculate how much more likely or more intense it was made by human-caused greenhouse gas emissions.
So you can actually quantify the link?
Exactly. They can now say things like, this heat wave was 10 times more likely, or even, this event would have been virtually impossible without climate change. This completely changes the conversation around accountability. It moves disasters from the realm of bad luck or acts of God into the realm of direct consequences of human actions, specifically burning fossil fuels.
Which opens the door to legal challenges.
Potentially, yes. Much like the tobacco lawsuits link smoking directly to cancer deaths, attribution science provides the evidence to potentially link fossil fuel companies' actions and products to the damages caused by climate change impacts. It's a powerful tool for accountability.
Okay, so we've seen the direct human cost, the inequality, the weaponization. What about the planet's major systems? The book talks about cascading crises. Let's start with the oceans. They've been acting as a buffer, haven't they?
A massive buffer. The oceans have absorbed something like 90% of the excess heat trapped by our emissions. It's hard to overstate how critical that's been. Without the oceans taking up that heat, the atmosphere would be vastly hotter already.
Well, there's a cost.
A devastating cost. The oceans are warming, becoming more acidic. We're seeing unprecedented marine heat waves. The source mentions the blob in the Pacific, a huge area of abnormally warm water that lasted for years, killing off marine life, disrupting fisheries.
And coral reefs.
Coral reefs are bleaching and dying globally. Think of Australia's Great Barrier Reef. Huge sections are gone or severely damaged. These reefs are vital ecosystems. The warming is also fueling stronger hurricanes and altering ocean currents, which in turn destabilizes weather patterns worldwide. The oceans, our great regulators, are becoming sources of instability.
And if the oceans are struggling, what about our food supply? That seems incredibly vulnerable too.
It's right on the front line. Heat directly impacts agriculture in multiple ways. Staple crops, corn, rice, wheat, they all have temperature thresholds. Too much heat messes with pollination. It stresses the plants, making them need more water, just as water becomes scarcer due to evaporation, and it makes them weaker, more susceptible to pests and diseases.
And we're already seeing the effects.
Definitely. The source cites data showing global agricultural productivity has already been reduced by about 21% over the past couple of decades due to climate change. That's huge. When harvests fail or yields drop, food prices go up. This disproportionately hits the poor and can lead to instability, even conflict. The book draws a line between climate-driven food price spikes and the social unrest that contributed to the Arab Spring, for instance.
So it's not just about comfort.
Not at all. As the source puts it, heat is not just about comfort. It is about bread. It's fundamental to survival and stability.
Which connects to the people who grow our food, build our cities. The source calls it the sweat economy. Millions working outdoors.
Yes, the sweat economy. While many of us work in climate-controlled environments, vast numbers of people globally work under the sun. Farmers, construction workers, miners, delivery drivers, the list goes on. These are the people bearing the immediate physical brunt of rising temperatures. The source highlights, for example, that U.S. farm workers are 35 times more likely to die from heat stroke than the average worker.
35 times.
It's shocking. And we're seeing increases in things like chronic kidney disease among agricultural workers in hot climates, like Central America, likely linked to chronic dehydration and heat stress.
And there's an economic cost too, presumably.
A massive one. The International Labor Organization estimates that by 2030, heat stress could reduce total working hours globally by the equivalent of 80 million full-time jobs. The lost productivity is projected in the trillions of dollars, around $2.4 trillion. It's a huge drag on the global economy, quite apart from the human suffering.
If we look even further to the poles, the book says they're like flashing red lights for the planet.
They really are. The Arctic and Antarctic are warming much faster than the global average, and the consequences are profound. Take the Thwaites Glacier in Antarctica, they call it the Doomsday Glacier. It's huge, it's becoming unstable, and if it were to collapse entirely, it holds enough ice to raise global sea levels by more than 3 meters. 10 feet.
10 feet? That's almost unimaginable for coastal cities.
It's catastrophic. And in the Arctic, we see sea ice vanishing at an alarming rate. Polar bears starving on Baffin Island because the ice they hunt from is gone. We're now expecting an Arctic Ocean basically free of summer ice within a decade or two.
And melting ice isn't just about sea level rise, is it?
No, it creates feedback loops. Ice is white. It reflects sunlight back into space. When it melts, it exposes darker ocean or land, which absorbs more heat, which causes more melting. It's an amplification effect. Plus, the temperature difference between the poles and the equator drives weather patterns like the jet stream. Messing with that destabilizes weather globally.
It really drives home the book's framing. Humans evolved in this Goldilocks zone, right? A climate that was stable, just right.
Exactly. For millennia, we've benefited from a relatively stable climate system that allowed agriculture to develop, civilizations to flourish. But burning fossil fuels is fundamentally altering that system. We are actively, aggressively pushing ourselves out of that Goldilocks zone. The stability we inherited, stability our societies are built on, it's gone.
The author, Jeff Goodell, has a quote about that, doesn't he?
Yes, it's powerful. We can save the future or we can save the past, but we cannot do both. It forces a choice. We can't pretend things aren't changing. We have to decide whether we cling to the systems driving the crisis or build something new, something sustainable.
That sounds incredibly daunting, almost overwhelming. But the source doesn't just leave us there, does it? It talks about solutions.
Absolutely not. The message isn't one of despair, but urgency. The solutions aren't some far-off mystery. They exist right now. They're practical.
Okay, so what are they, broadly?
Number 1, stop burning fossil fuels.
Right.
Coal, oil, gas. You have to transition away rapidly. Number 2, build out renewable energy sources massively. Solar, wind, geothermal, the costs have plummeted. The technology is mature. Safe nuclear power also has a role to play in providing reliable, low-carbon energy.
And these are already happening somewhere.
Yes, absolutely. Look at Spain, a leader in wind power. China is installing more solar capacity than the rest of the world combined. Costa Rica generates almost all of its electricity from renewables already. The blueprint is there, the technologies work. It's a matter of political will and scaling up massively globally.
Which requires that collective action piece.
It has to be collective. Climate change doesn't care about borders. One country's emissions affect everyone, so the responsibility has to be shared, the action coordinated, and the time to implement these known solutions at scale. Well, it was yesterday, but the next best time is right now.
Okay, so let's try to bring this all together. This deep dive has shown us that heat isn't just background noise. It's really the sharp edge, the front line of the climate crisis.
Definitely.
It's an invisible killer, but its impacts are incredibly visible and far-reaching on our bodies, our cities, driving migration, threatening our food and water, destabilizing oceans, hitting the poorest hardest.
And the core message from the source is stark, but also empowering in a way. The truth is simple. The heat will kill you first, unless we act. That unless we act is key. We still have agency. We still have the knowledge and the tools to build a very different future, a livable one. But the window is closing. Every year we delay makes the task harder, locks in more warming, more suffering.
So here's something to leave you, our listeners, with. A final thought to mull over. We've heard the science is clear. We know the solutions exist and are scalable. So what are the real barriers beyond just a lack of information that are stopping the kind of global collective action needed? What's really standing in the way? And maybe think about what role you play, what role we all play, in demanding that our leaders prioritize protecting life over protecting the fossil fuel industry. What does that look like in practice?